Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido, and today it is the Pastoria Hydros going up against the Olivine Raiders, as it is first place going up against second place. And let's have a look at this tale of the tape between these two sides, because they are contesting for the very top of the leaderboard. If you win this series, you will be sitting pretty on top, as the Hydros were unsuccessful the last time they went up against the Raiders. The Raiders were able to clean sweep the Hydros in Season A2, and they want to do that again here today. But with all that said, let us know in the comments below who you think's going to win this matchup. Will it be the water decks? Will it be the metal decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And starting off this match, it is going to be the Ultra Wormhole deck of the Olivine Raiders. They have got the Meltan in hand, and they thought of moving it into the active spot, but instead they have gone with the Stack Attacker. It is the Vanillite in the active spot with the Sandshrew and the Vulpix, both in their Alolan forms from the Luminous Frost deck of the Hydros going on the bench. But here we go, game one between these top two sides in the PokeType League TCG Season A3. Wow, that was a mouthful, as the big Malasada has been pulled for the Olivine Raiders, and they're immediately playing the Repel. They want to try and throw off the Hydros here, forcing them to put their Alolan Vulpix into the active spot, keeping in mind that the Pokemon in this Luminous Frost deck are weak to the metal types, as well as the rare candy is pulled for the Hydros. They've got the Vanillux and the Lily in hand, so they could evolve that Vanilla in the next turn if they so choose, using that rare candy. It is the call forth code, getting that extra energy onto the Alolan Vulpix, as the second Meltan is pulled for the Raiders, immediately moved on to the bench. There is that Melmetal in hand, like we said, and there is also the Lucamine, a first energy onto the Stack Attacker, as it is the Vanillish being pulled here for the Hydros. It only requires one energy for that Sweets Relay as well, and the first time they use that, it will do 30 damage. And they are going to retreat the Alolan Vulpix as well. They don't want to drop an early point, keeping in mind they take an additional 20 damage from the metal types here. And there's that Sweets Relay doing that 30 damage, as it does come back over to the Raiders, who do pull their Poison Barb. And when Stack Attacker goes for this Brass Rock, it does 40 damage plus that extra 20, but it also reduces the damage that Stack Attacker takes in the coming turn by 20, as it does have that Poison Barb attached. There's that 60 damage onto the Vanillish, leaving it with only 20 health remaining. It does come back over to the Hydros, who pull their Alolan Sandslash, immediately getting that on line here, and they are going to get that Vanillux online. They have that Lily in hand, who can restore up to 60 health from a stage 2 Pokemon, and they are going to play that immediately, getting Vanillux up to 140 health, back to max health, getting that second energy it needs for the double spin. For each head flip of these two coins, it does 80 damage, and they get a Tails on the first one, they get a Tails on the second one. It's going to do nothing, and it would have already had damage reduced thanks to that Brass Rock on the previous turn. They needed both to try and take Stack Attacker off the board, as it is the Necrozma being pulled for the Raiders, immediately moved on to the bench. And they are starting to set up the Melmetal, getting its first energy and coming online. The Brass Rock, 60 damage once again onto the Vanillux, and again Stack Attacker will take 20 less damage, so they need both head flips if they want Vanillux to be able to take Stack Attacker off the board from this double spin. They're going for it again, and they get the Tails immediately. They are able to get a single heads, but due to that damage being reduced, it is not enough to take Stack Attacker off the board, and this is fantastic for the Raiders. They've got that Lucamine in hand. They can get 2 energy that have been discarded onto an Ultra Beast, and they have used that card successfully for the Necrozma, who does require 3 energy. Melmetal getting its second of its 3 required energy, as they just pulled the Guzma. They go with the Brass Rock, and Vanillux with that poisoning wipes it off the board. The Raiders have taken the first point in game 1 of this 3-game series, where every game is worth 2 victory points counted towards the leaderboard. But those battle points, the first to 3, count towards the leaderboard, as does the damage, which the Raiders are trying to maximize with their type advantage. The Alolan Sandshrew has been pulled for the Hydros. They're having a look at their Sandslash, who only requires 1 energy. It does only do 20 damage, so it won't actually do anything to the Stack Attacker, but if Sandslash takes damage on the next turn, it does 40 damage back to the attacking Pokemon. So they're going for that strategy, hoping that Stack Attacker will wipe it off the board, and Sandslash, having done 0 damage to Stack Attacker, is not left with that poisoning either. Now the Raiders, they have that Beast Ball that can reduce the damage that an Ultra Beast takes if the opposing side has not taken any points. And they are going for that Brass Rock. They are going to get that 60 damage onto the Sandslash, but thanks to that 40 damage back onto the stack attacker, the Hydros are able to get a point, but in doing so, it also activates that poison bar before it's discarded. So now Sandslash does have to contend with the poisoning, as it is Necrozma being moved into the active spot for this Ultra Wormhole deck. Comes back over to the Hydros. They are able to pull a Vanillite here. They've also got the fishing net that can allow them to get a random basic Pokemon from their discard pile. Vulpix getting its second energy. They still need that Ninetales though, as a Spike Armor 20 damage onto Necrozma, setting up that Spike Armor once again for Sandslash here. Stack attacker being pulled for the Raiders, and they are going to play that Loose Mean, as we touched on earlier. We'll get those 2 energy from the discard pile, put onto Necrozma, gets that third from the energy zone, and this black metal has been set up, and it will do 120 damage thanks to that weakness coming into play. There is the 40 damage back onto the Necrozma. The Hydros, they need to pull the Ninetales if they want to get this Necrozma off the table. And not just that, this Ultra Wormhole deck only require 1 more energy. It's the Vanillux though being pulled for the Hydros. There's no energy on the Vanillite, but they are going to play the Rare Candy. This will allow them to get Vanillux online immediately. They still need the 2 energy though for that double spin. And we know Vulpix cannot outlast a hit here from Necrozma. 140 energy on the Vanillux. If the Raiders can get a Beastite here, instead they get the leftovers, it would have added an additional 20 power to that black metal, but regardless, they can still do 120 damage, not 140. I'm sure they wish they did 140, because that would have just won them game 1. It is now the Alola Ninetales being pulled for the Hydros as well, but unfortunately Ninetales has 1 energy on it. There's a 2 energy retreat cost for Vanillux. They go with the double spin. They need at least 1 heads. They get a Tails. They get 2 Tails. Again, this is not the game the Luminous Frost, I almost said Lumiose, the Luminous Frost were hoping for, as the Beastite is now pulled for the Raiders, and this is going to allow Necrozma to do well more than that 20 damage it needs to Vanillux. It's going to do 140, absolutely obliterating it off the board, as the Ultra Wormhole deck will take game 1 over the Luminous Frost deck. And as we have our first table reset, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, please leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the action in the PokeType League TCG. But as we get into game 2, it is the Raiders using their laser focus deck here, and we can see the arrow on that they are going to move in the active spot. They've got the Lairon in hand. The Hydros playing with their Ruins of Hope deck, moving the Tapu Fini, their only basic Pokemon, in hand into the active spot. Both sides only having 1 basic Pokemon. The Raiders are going to pull Aggron, and they've got the 2 rare candies already, so they can skip Lairon, but Aggron does require 4 energy. As the Primarina is pulled for the Hydros, they've also got the Sharpedo, but this Pokeball guarantees them a second basic Pokemon, being the Tapu Fini. They've also got the Professor's Research, so now they're going to get an additional 2 cards, quickly thinning this deck. They get the second Primarina, they get the second Sharpedo, so they're not getting many of the basic Pokemon that they need, as Tapu Fini does require 3 energy online. But fortunately for them, this Ruins of Hope deck is not weak to the metal types, as it's the second Aggron being pulled for the Raiders, a first of 2 required energy onto the Aggron as well, and they're going to get the Lairon. I'm not sure if I'm actually saying that correctly, but let's hope it is. Online, who does require 3 energy for that lunge out that does 60. It is a poison bar being laid out onto Tapu Fini as well. They want to make the Raiders extremely reluctant to go on the offensive. Tapu Fini getting its second of 3 required energy, the second Lairon being pulled for the Raiders as it gets its second energy onto the active Lairon. They've also got a big Malasada in hand, but they're not getting any basic Pokemon that they need, as it is the Briome pulled for the Hydros. This Spiral Drain is ready to go for the Tapu Fini, though. 60 damage onto the Lairon, bringing it down to only 40 health. The Raiders desperately need another basic Pokemon, and they get the Mawile, so this is good, because if they lost Lairon, they would have instantly lost game 2, and that is not how you want to drop a game, as they are going to get the Aggron online, who does have 100 health remaining. It can outlast the hit here from Tapu Fini. That Giga Impact, 150 damage. There is no Pokemon on the side of the Hydros Ruin of Hope deck that can outlast a hit from Aggron, but this Spiral Drain will take another 60 damage from Aggron, as the bench Tapu Fini has its single energy on it, as Sophocles being pulled for the Raiders. And there it is, that 4th energy onto the Aggron, and with this Giga Impact, they won't be able to use it in their next turn, but I don't think they're too concerned with that. They get the first point here in game 2, taking Tapu Fini clean off the board into the discard pile. And although they can't use it on the next turn, Tapu Fini can't go on the offensive yet either, because it still requires 2 more energy. Aggron has 30 health remaining. A Poplio finally being pulled for the Hydros. They've got the rare candy. They've got both Primarinas in hand, and they are going to get a second energy. No, they're hovering it over the Poplio. They're really thinking about how they want to approach this. They do decide to go with the Tapu Fini here, but still they can't go on the offensive just yet. Aggron has 20 health remaining. They can retreat, but they do have to give up all 4 energy, as it is the Professor's Research being played. They get the Klefki and they get the Sophocles here. They need the Togedemaris. They are going to get the Klefki onto the bench. And Klefki only requires 1 energy to go on the offensive, but they go with the Mawile instead, who does require 2 energy. So they are going to leave the Aggron there for the Tapu Fini to take off the board. It is the rare candy being pulled for the Hydros, so they are going to use one of them, the one that they pulled at the start of this game, so they can get these Primarinas online with that Melodious Healing, allowing them to restore 30 health, but none of the Pokemon on their side at the moment have taken any damage, as the Spiral Drain wipes Aggron off the board. All that set up for the Raiders. They were able to get off 1 Giga Impact, but now the Hydros have taken their first point in Game 2. And as we said, whoever takes this series will be on top of the leaderboard. The Hydros do not want to lose it in Game 2 here, as the Poison Barb is placed onto the Mawile. It does get a second energy. This powerful Vice does do 30 damage, and they can't use the Sophocles on it. They are going for it here. With that powerful Vice, they can also cause it so that Tapu Fini is paralyzed, but they need to flip this heads. And it is the tails. This is great for the Hydros, because with the Spiral Drain, it restores the health of Tapu Fini, but we mentioned Primarina's Melodious Healing can immediately offset that 30 damage. And even if Tapu Fini does go on the offensive and get poisoned, thanks to that Poison Barb, they can continue to offset the damage. That is one of the things that has made this Ruins of Hope deck so dangerous all season long, as that poisoning now put onto Tapu Fini, chipping away at its health. The Raiders pulling the leftovers that they cannot attach to the Mawile here. They do get a first energy onto the Klefki, and they're trying to get the paralysis onto Tapu Fini, it seems, going with another powerful Vice. 30 damage. They need to flip the heads this time, and they get it. Tapu Fini is stuck in place. With that said though, there is the poisoning doing the damage to it as well, but that powerful Vice, that 30 damage can immediately be offset, as will the Big Malasada, curing Tapu Fini of that paralysis, so it can go on the offensive as well. It still has that poisoning to contend with, but it does have 30 more health restored thanks to the Melodious Healing of Primarina, and the Spiral Drain will restore even more health as it wipes Mawile off the board into the discard pile, and the Ruins of Hope deck are in full control, taking their second point. And the Raiders, with only Klefki on the bench, have to move it into the active spot. With that unlock, it does do 10 damage, allows them to draw an additional card, and there is the second Klefki actually being pulled at the moment as well. Their hand is starting to fill up quite nicely there, and with this unlock chipping away at Tapu Fini. As we said, the Hydro is able to heal Tapu Fini with the Primarina, with Tapu Fini's Spiral Drain as well. They do not have the firepower on the side of the Raiders at the moment to take Tapu Fini off the board, as the Carvana is pulled for the Hydros, getting its first energy, another Melodious Healing. This is a very meticulous deck. They do take their time here, but it does pay off well when they're set up, as another 60 damage onto the Klefki, bringing it down to only 10 health remaining. But we finally see a Togedemaru being pulled for the Raiders. They get it onto the bench. Those Bristling Spikes, they do 30 damage, but they also set it up so the opposing Pokemon takes damage if they attack the Togedemaru in the coming turn. And they are going with the second Klefki in the active spot after retreating that initial Klefki here, just trying to chip away, keep themselves in the matches. It seems that they want to set up the Togedemaru. The Sharpedo can come online. That Crunch does 50 damage, so again, not enough to take the Klefki off the board, but they can continue with the Melodious Healing here. Again, that very methodical pace from this Ruins of Hope deck has been very beneficial to them, a very large part of their successful season so far. But the Raiders, with that firepower, they're so hard to take down. They're one of the more energy hungry teams in the PokeType League TCG, but it has been working for them. There's that 60 damage onto the Klefki here. And the Raiders, they are going to retreat the Klefki, bringing the Togedemaru into the active spot. They've got the Aron in hand, but it's the Mawile taking that final bench slot, the second energy for those Bristling Spikes, and they've got the Sophocles, allowing it to do an additional 30 damage, so they can get 60 damage onto the Tapu Fini here. And with that, Tapu Fini is left with 30 health. The poisoning coming into play, bringing it down to 20, but that Primarina will be able to restore 30 of that health as we continue to see. They are going to get another energy though onto the Tapu Fini. They're going to retreat the Tapu Fini, bringing the Primarina into the active spot. They still, with that Melodious Healing, it restores health from all of their Pokemon that have taken damage. So Tapu Fini still getting 30 health back, and they're going to ride that Surf, bringing Togedemaru down to only 20 health remaining. It is Primarina that will take that 30 damage instead of Tapu Fini. It would have kept it in discard range. The second Togedemaru being pulled for the Raiders. It cannot be moved onto the bench though, and it looks like they've got 9 cards in their hand at this current time. They're going with the Sophocles. They know what is going to happen to the Togedemaru here. They are willing to give up game 2 to maximize their damage here. They're not attaching energy. They're just going with the bristling spikes onto the Primarina. As it does come back over to the Hydros, they pull the Poplar, but they're not going to worry about their energy either. They're not going with the healing, they're just going for the win. And it is the Ruins of Hope deck taking game 2 as Primarina does stay on the board after taking that 30 damage from the Togedemaru, but it will be our final table reset to determine our series winner, our series decider here. We'll be finding out very soon who is on top of the leaderboard, as it is the Hydros going first this time with their Brooklet Hill deck. It is the Pyukumuku into the active spot. It is the Magina from that Super Burst Impact deck of the Raiders going into their active spot. But here we go, our game 3, the decider to determine who is on top of the leaderboard. At the end of this matchup, the Guzma pulled for the Hydros, but they play the Professor's Research. They get the Shoulder, they get the Leftovers. So that Shoulder allows them to have a basic Pokemon on the bench. And we did just see the Hydros take their first ever game win over the Raiders. They're hoping for 2 in a row if they want to keep themselves on top of the leaderboard, as the Raiders pull their own Guzma and use their own Professor's Research. They get their second Magina and the Alolan Dugtrio. That second Magina going on the bench, the first one receiving its first energy. And this Silver Cannon, it does 40 damage, but because Pyukumuku does have an ability, it does an additional 40, which means Pyukumuku will be capable of being discarded in one hit from that Silver Cannon. The Pokeball that was pulled being played immediately for the Hydros allows them to get the Dewpider. They do move that onto the bench as they get that 1 required energy onto the Pyukumuku. Now, if a Pokemon is successful in discarding Pyukumuku with its offense, they do take 50 recoil damage from that in its out ability. As the Ferrothorn is pulled for the Raiders, it is the Professor's Research, their second one being played. They get the Dugtrio, they get the X Speed as well, and Magina only has a 1 energy retreat cost, as that Silver Cannon is online and ready to go, and it's 80 damage, discarding Pyukumuku from the board. Again, the Raiders taking that quick lead, but there's that 50 damage back onto the Magina. Unfortunately, Shelter only does 10 damage, so it's not enough to get the Magina off the board either. But now Magina's Silver Cannon is only capable of doing 40 damage, as it's a Poison Bar being pulled for the Hydros, and they've got the Araquanid coming online with those Dangerous Claws as well, capable of doing 60 damage and an additional 60 to a Pokemon if it is a basic Pokemon as well, which is exactly what Magina is. The Poison Barb placed on the shoulder, that 10 damage onto Magina, leaving it with only 10 health remaining. And the Hydra is trying to make it so that Magina won't go on the offensive, but they've just pulled the potion, immediately restoring 20 health, bringing it back up to 30. For the Raiders, a first energy onto the benched Magina, and they are going to play the Guzma as well, getting that Poison Barb immediately discarded from the shoulder here, allowing that Silver Cannon to go on the offensive unimpeded at the risk of being poisoned as it comes back over to the Hydros, pulling their second Pyukumuku as well, immediately moving that onto the bench, and they are going to get a first energy onto the Araquanid, who pairs perfectly with the Lana because it allows them to draw a Pokemon from the opposing side's bench into the active spot whilst Araquanid is in play. But they're going to retreat the shoulder. They're moving Pyukumuku into the active spot. They're willing to go for the risky play of the in and out, knowing what the Raiders can do with those Maginas online. It is the Diglett though being pulled for the Raiders. They've got the Dugtrio already in hand. It's a second energy though onto the benched Magina, and they are going to play the X Speed so they can retreat the active Magina for only for 0 energy, not for only 1, for 0, bringing that benched Magina full health into the active spot, as it will not take enough damage to be discarded, which the other Magina would have, as Pyukumuku is discarded from the board. 50 damage though onto Magina, bringing it down to 40 health, and that's the second point for the Raiders. They are 1 point away from taking game 3 and taking this series and moving themselves up to the top of the leaderboard. It is the cloister being pulled for the Hydros, immediately coming online. There's no energy on it anymore after that retreat. A second energy though onto the Araquanid here. And they still need one more energy for Araquanid, so they end their turn. It is another Diglett being pulled for the Raiders, as their bench Diglett gets its first energy and is now in a Alolan Dugtrio. Still needs one more energy as they move their second Diglett onto the bench, and that Silver Cannon 40 damage onto the Araquanid, leaving it with 70 health remaining. That Iron Head is capable of doing 70 damage, but it needs to flip a heads. As long as they're flipping heads, it keeps doing 70 damage. As soon as they flip a tails, even if it's at the start, it will end. So it's capable of doing 0, it's capable of doing infinite. They have a look at the Lana, they place the leftovers onto the Araquanid after also using the Big Mouth starter to restore the health of Araquanid. And here it is, that 120 damage from the Dangerous Claws, wiping Magina off the board. The Hydros are trying to bring this back. They have to take 3 consecutive points to bring down the Raiders. They cannot drop a point here, but it is the Alolan Dugtrio moved into the active spot. They can use this to they need to get 2 consecutive heads to wipe Araquanid off the board and win the game. They also get the Poison Barb onto the Dugtrio, and here it is, that second energy getting ready for the Iron Head. It needs to be 2 consecutive head flips, and here we go. They get the tails straight away. There is 0 damage done to the Araquanid by the Dugtrio. That is not good for the Raiders, as it will be able to come back over to the Hydros. Araquanid still with 90 health. They pull their second Lana. They can only play one of these per turn, as it is the supporter card, and they are able to choose who they want to drag into the active spot. It's either an Alolan Dugtrio or that Magina. 120 damage is capable because it is a basic Pokemon. It's only got 30 health remaining though, and it is a second point for the Hydros. We are down to a 1-point game. The next point taken will win this series. The Hydros trying to bring it back. It is the Dugtrio with the Poison Bar being moved back into the active spot. Again, it needs to flip 2 heads in a row. It's the Ferroseed being pulled for the Raiders. They've got the Ferrothorn in hand. They get an energy onto the Dugtrio, and they're going to move the Ferroseed into that benched position. They don't know that there's a second Lana in hand for the Hydros, but the Raiders are able to get a heads, but they only get 1. And with only getting 1 head, it is able to come back over to the Hydros. They're able to play their second Lana, and they get to choose who is dragged into that active spot. And they pick the Ferroseed, being a basic Pokemon. 120 damage to the Raiders. They did not know that the second Lana was in hand, and that has cost them the game, as well as not getting 2 heads in a row. And the Hydros take this series, getting those 3 consecutive points to keep themselves on top of the leaderboard, as the next round they are going up against the Petalburg Razors. Whereas for the Raiders next round, they've got their bye, and after that they're going up against the Kitakami Rooks, who are currently in 3rd. But until then, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what cards you pulled today, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.